What if a modern aircraft carrier loaded with jets, missiles, and cutting-edge technology was suddenly thrown back in time to the day before Pearl Harbor? Would you change history or let it happen? That's the wild question at the heart of this gripping sci-fi war thriller. Hello to all the classic people that are returning. I'm glad you're back. I want to welcome any new visitors and let you know that there will be spoilers ahead. Today on Classic Movie Review, we are taking on the great sci-fi naval film, The Final Countdown 1980. For some reason, and I couldn't tell you why, this film has a very low 6.7 rating on IMDb.com. It's even worse on RottenTomatoes.com, with 52% on the tomato meter and 60% on the popcorn/audience rating. Am I out of touch with movie viewers? Or is this story at 103 minutes too long and complicated? Well, anyway, it's been one of my favorites since my first viewing in 1980. Great googly moogly. Even the treasured film critic Roger Ebert panned this film with 2 of 4 stars in a review on August 5th, 1980, saying in part, quote, "That still leaves me with other problems. For example, Nimitz Commander Kirk Douglas launches an air attack against the arriving Japanese Air Force and then calls it off at the last minute, just as the Nimitz is sailing back into the second whirlpool. Why change his mind and call it off? Is he reluctant to play God? I don't know, and he doesn't say," unquote. I can think of one good reason for calling the planes back. When the Nimitz is snatched back to 1980, the planes would be left flying around the Pacific with no place to land. Continuing the quote, "The movie dodges all sorts of fundamental questions like that, and it moves so slowly, alas, that we have lots of time to ponder them. Still, the footage aboard the carrier is good. We got an interesting notion of life on ship, and we see lots of takeoffs and even an emergency landing. This is the kind of movie that some kids would probably enjoy. It's filled with technology, special effects, and action. But it just doesn't make any sense, and it lacks the wit to have fun with the time travel paradox as last year's wonderful Time After Time did. It just plows ahead, or behind, or somewhere," unquote. Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert placed this film on their list of the worst movies of 1980. Well, let's move on to the actors and see if we can bring the mood up a bit. Actors. The boundless actor Kirk Douglas played the USS Nimitz commander, Captain Matthew Yellen. This wonderful actor was first covered in another naval yarn, In Harm's Way 1965, and there's a link below. Douglas was over the top in his acting with lines like, "I have no idea what the hell's going on." Ron O'Neal played Executive Officer Commander Dan Thurman. O'Neal was first covered in the action-packed Red Dawn 1984, and there's a link below for that, and he is probably best known for playing the lead in the action-packed Superfly 1972. Catherine Ross played the role of Senatorial Secretary Laurel Scott. She also held up the love interest role for the entire film. Ross was first covered in the cheesy but fun John Wayne all-whale firefighting film Hellfighters 1968. And there's a link below, where she also held down the love interest role. Large man and great dancer Charles Durning played the role of Senator Samuel Chapman. Durning was covered in the enjoyable holiday film Home for the Holidays 1995. There's a link below. He's also known for his role in The Sting 1973, and there's a link for that too, and as the grumpy governor of Mississippi, Pappy O'Daniels in Oh Brother Where Art Thou 2000. James Ferrantino played the role of Commander Richard Owens and someone else. He was born in 1938 in New York City.
Hey, I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
He was educated in the Brooklyn parochial school system and later studied at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, class of 1958. By his name, I thought James Ferrantino was a more popular actor. In fact, he wasn't in as many good movies as I thought. His most notable films include Ensign Pulver 1964, The Warlord 1965, The Family Rico 1972, Today's Film The Final Countdown 1980, and Bulletproof 1996. Ferrantino was much more active on television, appearing in miniseries and made-for-TV movies. He appeared in the legal drama The Bold Ones, The Lawyers, from 1968 to 1972, starring in 19 episodes. Ferrantino played Peter in the miniseries Jesus of Nazareth in 1977. He was on Dynasty for 20 episodes from 1981 to 1982. Ferrantino was one of the last Universal contract actors, retiring from acting in the 2000s. He had some legal problems and died in 2012. Martin Sheen was the main driver of this film as civilian consultant to the Navy, Warren Lasky. Sheen is a huge star, but I never realized until I began putting this together how much of his career was spent on television as opposed to film. Sheen was born in Ohio in 1940. His parents were immigrants. His father was from Spain and his mother was from Ireland. His birth name was Ramon Antonio Gerard Estevez. Sheen attended a Catholic high school in Dayton. He failed the entrance exam for the University of Dayton, possibly on purpose. He moved to New York and began working in theater. Sheen began appearing on television in 1961, starring in shows such as Route 66, Naked City, Ironside, Columbo, Hawaii Five-0, and Mod Squad. In 1964, Sheen appeared on Broadway in The Subject Was Roses. He also appeared in the movie The Subject Was Roses, 1968. Sheen's film debut was a pretty good The Incident, 1967. Where were you, buddy? Did you get that reference? He was really beginning to shine by the time he was in Badlands, 1973, with Sissy Spacek. Sheen was outstanding in the made-for-television film The Execution of Private Slovak in 1974, sympathetically telling the story of one of the few American soldiers executed for cowardice during World War II. Sheen began to secure good film roles, such as The Cassandra Crossing 1976 and Apocalypse Now 1979. I'll just say it was uber amazing. Other films include today's film, The Final Countdown 1980, Enigma 1982, Gandhi 1982, and The Dead Zone 1983, where Christopher Walken is freakishly perfect. These were followed by Wall Street 1987, starring his son Charlie Sheen, and Gettysburg 1993. Sheen continued with Catch Me If You Can 2002 with Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks, The American President 1995, and the fantastic The Departed 2006. Sheen played Uncle Ben in The Amazing Spider-Man 2012 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 2014. On television's The West Wing, Sheen played President Bartlett for 155 episodes from 1999 to 2006. We could only wish. He appeared in 94 episodes of Grace and Frankie from 2015 to 2022. Sheen has 2 Daytime Emmys, 1 Primetime Emmy, 1 Golden Globe, but he has never been nominated for an Academy Award. Sheen is still active. Story. This movie begins with military radio traffic over a black screen. Then it reveals the engines of a badass F-14 Tomcat with the Jolly Rogers of VF-84 taking off from a land-based runway. VF-84 is the 84th Navy Fighter Squadron that existed between July 1955 and October 1995. It used the skull and crossbones of a Golden Era pirate ship flag known as the Jolly Rogers. The Navy Sikorsky SH-3 Sea King helicopter flies across the runway after the jet is gone. The credits begin to roll. A rather tricked-out limousine enters the gates of Pearl Harbor Naval Base as the helicopter lands at a hangar near the pier. Warren Lasky, Martin Sheen, is dropped off by a military car and is about to climb onto the helicopter when he notices the limo parked in a manner to watch his departure. He walks towards the car, but is prevented from seeing the passenger by the driver and his assistant. He is told that his mysterious boss, Mr. Tideman, is in the car. He has never met Tideman, and they refuse to allow him to approach the limousine. Lasky departs in the Sea King helicopter. Views of Diamond Head in Hawaii are shown as they fly. Eventually, they pass over the memorial for the sunken USS Arizona that went down on December 7, 1941, when the Japanese Empire attacked the base, bringing America into World War II. Lasky is heloed out to the aircraft carrier, the USS Nimitz. The carrier is being escorted by some destroyers and has at least one Soviet fishing trawler following behind. On the deck, Lasky is greeted by the executive officer, Commander Dan Thurman, Ron O'Neill. He is then escorted to the bridge where he is to meet Captain Matthew Yellen, Kirk Douglas. The ship is in the process of landing jets on the deck, and they mention that the CAG, Commander Air Group, is inbound. They show the landing and the recovery wires. It's as exciting as anything in Top Gun 1986. The CAG lands and its commander Richard Owens, James Ferrantino. On the way to the bridge, Commander Thurman grills Lasky about his Defense Department work for Tideman Industries. Lasky explains that he is a system analyst or essentially an efficiency expert. When leaving the flight deck, Commander Owens mentions that the weather is changing. Lasky meets Captain Yellen, where he mentions that the weather is turning poor. Captain Yellen quizzes Lasky about the 2-day delay his arrival caused and the real purpose of his visit. Lasky is escorted to his room by a Marine guard. The storm, consisting mainly of lightning bolts, is moving closer to the ship. Captain Yellen mentions that the weather officer, Black Cloud, Victor Mojica, forecasted clear weather for the day. Having a Native American as a weather officer is a good 1980s joke, and yes, they did make the rain dance reference later. In the weather office, scans are showing that the storm is cycling in and out of phase. Black Cloud thinks it's a mechanical problem. Lasky explores his bare room before heading into the adjoining room that is Commander Owens' bunk. There are numerous photographs, books, manuscripts, and writings on the subject of the Pearl Harbor attack. Lasky begins reading the writing. Captain Yellen is told that the last aircraft to be recovered is having problems because of the storm. At the same time, Commander Owens catches Lasky in his room reading his research. Commander Owens throws a hissy fit, and Lasky gets out as quickly as he can. He does mention several times what he read was very good. Black Cloud reports to the captain, and they see on the scope that the storm is phasing in and out. It now appears as a blue circular storm. Captain Yellen sends the destroyers back to Pearl. They are informed that the last flight coming in cannot deploy its tailhook. They rig the barricade, but don't park heavy equipment behind it like was done in the bridges at Tokari in 1954. The blue storm hits the ship before the plane lands. Equipment stops and people are affected by loud, debilitating harmonics. The ship passes through the storm and the weather is suddenly clear. Captain Yellen orders the crew to general quarters. The last airplane is still inbound. The pilot manages to land and is stopped by the barricade. However, the pilot is dead. The destroyers and the Russian trawler are no longer seen on the scope. The radios are not working either. Yellen has Owen put 2 Tomcats on alert. A Crusader, a supersonic jet fighter, is sent on a photo run of Pearl Harbor, and a Hawkeye, a mini AWACS, is sent to check communications. He sends Thurman to check the threat board in case it was a nuclear attack. As Lasky arrives, Yellen calls for all department heads to a meeting. That was very Star Trek The Next Generation of him to call a meeting. In the threat room, the operator is receiving an old radio code. The crew is on edge because they don't know what is happening. Yellen, very humanly, admits he doesn't know what is happening before he checks in with each department head. Communications can't contact anyone. Lasky has nothing to add to the meeting. The Crusader makes a high and then a low pass over Pearl Harbor. Communications say they are receiving on the AM channels. They are receiving the Jack Benny and Rochester show. Yellen orders a strike group and tanker on standby. The crew arms the aircraft for a fight. Radar reports a surface contact. Yellen orders the 2 Tomcats into the air to identify the surface contact. The Crusader returns from Pearl. Prior to the arrival of the Tomcats, the surface contact is shown to be a vintage yacht out of Pearl Harbor called the Gatsby. On board are Senator Samuel Chapman, Charles Durney, Senatorial Secretary Laurel Scott, Catherine Ross, Arthur Bellman, Harold Bergman, an aide, and a ship's captain. Laurel is the brains behind the senator. She has her dog Charlie with her on board. Laurel is helping the senator angle for the vice presidential slot during the next administration. Arthur is only concerned with gossip about Laurel. Charlie the dog begins to react to distant rumbling. The 2 Tomcats make a high-speed pass over the yacht. Everyone on the yacht is awestruck as they have never seen anything so fast. Chapman thinks it's a secret military project that he hasn't been informed about yet. The Tomcats report that it is an antique yacht in mint condition. Yellen sends tankers/refuelers to the locations so the Tomcats can remain near the contact. The crew listens to radio broadcasts from the 1940s. Yellen takes Lasky and Thurman outside for a talk. Yellen thinks there's been an attack. Thurman questions Lasky if he has hidden information about the event. Yellen and Thurman are called to the plot room where they hear a radio broadcast about the Nazis' invasion of the Soviet Union. An enlisted man hears the broadcast and thinks a new world war has started. Of course, he shares the bogus information with the entire crew. The photographs from the run over Pearl Harbor are brought to Yellen. Yellen recognizes the photos as being from before World War II. They request that Lasky be brought in for consultation. Under questioning from Yellen, Lasky confirms again that he is not holding back any information. When Lasky is shown the images, he asks that Owens come up and bring his research photographs. The Tomcats begin the in-flight refueling, and it's a nice aerial sequence. Owens confirms to Yellen that the recon pictures are how Pearl Harbor looked on the eve of December 7, 1941. Yellen gets word that two unidentified aircrafts are 125 miles out from the carrier. He redirects the Tomcats to identify the blips. The Tomcats identify the blips as Japanese Mitsubishi A6M Zeros in mint condition. These planes will be over 40 years old on the carrier's timeline. Yellen has the Tomcats stay at a high altitude and observe. Yellen, Thurman, Owens, and Lasky talk. Lasky is the first to bring up time travel and things that humans have yet to learn.
All of us know that movement through time is possible. Einstein proved it. There are forces in the universe which we're only now just beginning to understand.
Back on the yacht, everyone is relaxing when they hear the drone of the approaching Zeros. The two Zeros make a pass over the yacht and quickly turn back towards the boat. The Zeros open fire with their machine guns. The captain and Arthur are killed. With the Zeros approaching again, Chapman tells Laurel to get off the yacht. They jump into the water, followed by a below-deck crew member and the dog. The Tomcats report the strafing of the yacht to Yellen. Owen says the Zeros would attack the civilian boat because it may use its radios to warn of their presence in the area. Yellen asks where the Japanese fleet would be, and he is told to the northwest of Hawaii. Yellen orders a mini AWACS airborne to check that location. The Tomcats are not authorized to fire. The second pass of the Zeros causes the yacht to explode. The Zeros return for another strafing pass. Laurel and Chapman take off their life preservers and dive. The helper doesn't know how to swim and stays on the surface. He is killed by the bullets. Learn to swim, buddy. Yellen orders the Tomcats to draw the Zeros off, but not to fire at the planes. In my opinion, this led to one of the greatest aerial sequences in movie history. The music and the juxtaposition of those amazing jets flying in close proximity to the vintage Zeros are amazing. Another thing I like here is that one of the Japanese pilots fires at an airplane that clearly outclasses his. We often forget that these were the best trained and most aggressive flyers that Japan had during the entire war. Once they shoot at the plane, the Tomcats are authorized to fire back. The first pilot downs a Zero with his machine gun. The other pilot uses a missile. Hey man, missiles are expensive. Learn to fight. I'm too close for missiles. I'm switching to guns. Laurel and the dog are playing Jack and Rose with a piece of floating board.
It's okay. Easy boy. Up you go.
I think they could both fit on it, but the dog wants his own piece. The E-2 mini AWACS reports the Japanese attack fleet at the expected location, and Yellen accepts the fact that they have gone back in time. Yellen orders a rescue helicopter with Owens in command to pick up the yacht survivors and a surviving Japanese pilot. He tells Owens to keep the survivors isolated. At the wreck site, a diver goes in the water and hooks the Senator first. The dog is standing on its own board when Laurel tries to swim to it. Seeing that she is struggling, Owens jumps into the water. He tells her to forget the dog as the diver hooks her up to the sling and they pull her inside the helicopter. Owens rides up on the next sling and he is holding the dog. Laurel's in love with the future man. The Senator questions Owens and the commander recognizes the name. Another helicopter picks up the surviving Japanese pilot, Shimura Soon-Tek-Oh, a Korean. Shimura is shocked by what he sees on the aircraft carrier. Yellen takes Thurman, Owens, and Lasky for another talk. Yellen wants to know what the next step should be. Thurman wants to attack, while Lasky only thinks about what can be done with the information. Owens feels that they can't do anything to change the past. He then decides that defending the U.S. is their mission. Senator Chapman is not happy being held below deck. Laurel is okay when Charlie the dog is returned to her. Back in the cabins, Lasky invades Owens' room again, looking for information. When Owens returns, he realizes that his material has been moved. Lasky mentions to Owens that Chapman, a warhawk, went missing after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Otherwise, he may have become FDR's running mate and would have acceded to the presidency on FDR's death. So Owens is not pleased with the potential changes to history. Senator Chapman thinks this is a trick that FDR has cooked up to make himself look good after he sends his surprise carrier to defeat the Japanese. Owen and Lasky go to where the senator and Laurel are being held. They pass Samura, who is being questioned by an interpreter. When Owens opens the door, Chapman charges towards him and the dog escapes. Lasky grabs the dog. This distracts the guard long enough for Samura to grab his weapon and kill him and another Marine. Marines quickly surround the area where the armed prisoner is holding Lasky, Chapman, Owens, and Laurel. They obtain a translator, and Samura requests a radio so he can communicate with his commander. The Marines bust in through a door that Owens opens, and the prisoner grabs Laurel. Yellen says he can use the radio if he lets Laurel go free. At the suggestion of Lasky, Owens is ordered to tell the prisoner the coming battle plan for the attack. Both Chapman and Samura are in shock at the news. A Marine moves too quickly and Samura shoots him. The other Marines gun the prisoner down. Owens comforts Laurel, but he won't tell her what is happening. Before long, she becomes concerned about the missing dog. Yellen speaks with Senator Chapman, and the senator cannot accept that one carrier can ward off an entire invasion fleet.
What's happening here? Who are you people?
Are we at war? Is that what happened?
Yellen agrees to let Chapman contact Pearl Harbor. The call goes very poorly as the people at Pearl Harbor think Chapman is playing a prank. Owens is very pleased with Laurel's liberated attitude. Yellen, Chapman, Laurel, Owens, and Lasky meet in one of the offices. Chapman demands to be taken to Pearl Harbor. Yellen agrees to do so. Laurel is still trying to find the dog. Yellen tells Owens to drop Chapman and Laurel on a deserted island near Pearl Harbor. He tells Owens to be back by 8 a.m. so he can lead the strike against the Japanese. Lasky asks Owens to take him to Pearl, but soon realizes the helicopter is not going to Pearl. In the carrier hangar, armament crews are loading every plane that can fight. Captain Yellen goes on the ship address system and tells the crew that they have traveled back in time. He says he plans to change the outcome of the battle. Loading activities and flight operations kick into high gear with a stimulating, patriotic soundtrack. Lasky finds the missing dog, Charlie. The helicopter lands on a deserted beach. Laurel and Owens get out, but Chapman hangs back, knowing he is being tricked. Chapman grabs a flare gun and holds the helicopter crew hostage. He orders them up, and Owens hangs from the door, trying to stop the liftoff. An injured crewman jumps Chapman, and the flare gun goes off. The helicopter explodes and drops off radar. With Owens presumed to be lost, Yellen orders the attack to commence. There's a nice long montage of jets being handled and launched. Owens and Laurel are stranded on the island. As she checks out the sea rations and thinks about the situation, the Japanese attack force flies over en route to Pearl. A massive modern attack force is en route to intercept the Japanese. The weather officer, Black Cloud, is shown that the time portal storm has reappeared. Yellen watches the storm as the attack is about 6 minutes away. By the time they are 4 minutes out, the weather is turning really bad. Black Cloud tells the captain that the storm is changing course and following them. Yellen begins to recall his attack force, but Lasky thinks they should correct all history's mistakes going forward. Yellen orders the planes to return to the ship. The fighters are disappointed that the attack is happening again. The carrier goes through the storm and the men are physically suffering. This is intercut with great shots of the attack on Pearl Harbor. I'll talk more about this in the conclusion. The carrier makes it through the storm into the clear, but the airplanes are not back. Finally, they make it through the storm as well and back to the ship. There's another great montage of flybys and landings, accompanied by appropriate patriotic music and FDR's infamy speech.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
The Nimitz makes it back to Pearl Harbor. Yellen renders honors to the sunken USS Arizona. When they dock, an entourage of admirals arrive. They start chewing on Yellen right away. Lasky goes into Owen's room and looks at the manuscript once more before leaving. Lasky has the dog in tow. He and Yellen have a pretty typical manly goodbye. Charlie starts barking at Tideman's limo. When the back door of the limo is open, Charlie breaks free and runs inside. Lasky is told that he can join Mr. and Mrs. Tideman in the limo. In the back are Laurel and Commander Owens, but 40 years older. The dog is with Laurel. Laurel smiles and Owens welcomes Lasky back, saying they have a lot to talk about. Conclusion. The scenes showing the attack on Pearl Harbor were from the absolutely great movie Tora, 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 1970. If you haven't seen it, please do so as soon as possible. You won't regret the time you spent. All of the exterior filming on the Nimitz took place near the Florida Keys instead of in the Pacific Ocean as depicted in the film. The use of the Nimitz was reportedly cut short as the carrier was called to duty following the failed hostage rescue from the U.S. Embassy in Iran. I was stationed in Germany at the time, and they put us on alert. We went all the way to the border and were toe-to-toe with Ivan the Terrible. He blinked first. Since there was no effective CGI at the time of filming, the scenes with the AT-6 Texans mocked up to resemble A-6 M2 Zeros and the F-14 Tomcats featured the Zeros at maximum speed with the Tomcats flying just above stall speed. Even though they did that, they could only be in the same frame for short periods. In a similar vein, it has been alleged that the destroyer escort USS Eldridge was part of a 1943 experiment using Albert Einstein's unified field theory. It was either to transport the ship to other locations or to make it invisible. The story is sometimes referred to as the Philadelphia experiment. There's no evidence to indicate that it's a true story. However, it was made into an interesting movie called The Philadelphia Experiment in 1984. The movie starred Michael Paré and Nancy Allen. The problem in the movie was that people materialized inside walls and decks. They were also bouncing around in time. Around this time, there was a spate of time-traveling movies, including Somewhere in Time, 1980, The Terminator, 1984, and Back to the Future 1985, and there's a link for that one. Of course, I don't want to leave out one of Mrs. Classic Movie Review's favorites, Time After Time 1979. In this film, David Warner, as Jack the Ripper, is friends with Malcolm McDowell as H.G. Wells. The Ripper steals Wells' time machine and goes forward in time where he thinks society has become evil enough for him. Mary Steenburgen is outstanding as a modern woman. Two things made me very sad in this review. The first is that film critic Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert voted this one of the worst films of the 1980s. I don't see it. The second thing is that the title of today's film allegedly inspired the Swedish rock band Europe to record the song The Final Countdown in 1986. I can't unhear it. There was an alternative ending film that I have not seen. In that ending, the Nimitz returns to the present and everything is changed. Holy Abraham Lincoln! Finally, it is well known that aircraft carriers don't operate alone. They are generally the center of a well-protected strike force. In today's film, Yellen orders the rest of the fleet to return to Pearl Harbor before the storm hits. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the American aircraft carriers were at sea, with most of the fleet remaining in the harbor. As such, the attack mainly damaged the battleships. Of course, battleships were the pivotal ships in World War I. The fact that the carriers were at sea led to a persistent rumor that FDR lured the attack but protected his most valuable assets by having them at sea. The carriers were actually out doing things like supplying aircraft to Wake and Midway Islands. The importance of the aircraft carrier was not generally appreciated by the U.S. military as a whole at the time of the Pearl Harbor attack. The importance of aircraft carriers was confirmed later in World War II, particularly in the pivotal battles of the Pacific, notably the Battle of the Coral Sea and the Battle of Midway. There's a fairly good movie that covers a true but highly fictionalized version of the struggle for carrier preeminence during the period between the First and Second World Wars. The Court-Martial of Billy Mitchell, 1955, was directed by Otto Preminger. It had an all-star cast, including in part Gary Cooper, Elizabeth Montgomery, Charles Bickford, Ralph Bellamy, Rod Steiger, Fred Clark, Darren McGavin, Jack Lord, and Peter Graves. Check it out. World famous short summary. They got the dog back for 10 more years. If you enjoyed the show and want more, please consider giving me a like, subscribing, or commenting. It really helps the show get found. As a technical note, references and citations are listed for each show on the site at classicmovierev.com. The site contains a wealth of information, especially about film noir. The second, there'll be a couple of boxes popping up here. The first is a movie review I recommend for you to watch. The other is a playlist with movies similar to today's topic. You probably heard the thundering while I was recording today. It's very appropriate to go with this movie as they were swept through time with a storm. I think it's getting closer. Oh my goodness. Oh. Beware the Moors.